Happy Friday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for August 2nd, 2024. International Beer Day. Need I say more? Except drink responsibly. Today is also National Ice Cream Sandwich Day. It's the first of 5 Fridays this month, which usually means the release of the jobs report, right? First Friday of almost every month, and it was not good. The Labor Department report showed job growth slowing down more than what was expected. 114,000 jobs added to the economy last month, while economists polled by Dow Jones were expecting an increase of 185,000. Again, came in at 114,000, so well below the mark. Stock markets are deep in the red this morning. Dow off more than 400, S&P off nearly 100 points. Yeah, happy Friday. President Biden did emerge yesterday to talk about the prisoner swap, which the White House says he played a direct role in. He didn't talk at all about the plea deal of the 9/11 terrorists, which the White House said he played no role in.
This is something that we had no involvement in. He didn't have any involvement in. And so the White House played no role in this process.
How does the president play no role in making a plea deal with the people responsible for the largest attack on U.S. soil that killed nearly 3,000 innocent Americans? But last year, you may recall, they gave him credit, or he took credit, for stopping the plea deal at that time. You remember? Today, President Biden is headed home to Delaware, all of which I predicted yesterday, so I hope you're paying attention. I have plenty of commentary from your favorite Newsmax shows on the return of the hostages and the terrorist plea deal, but first, if you missed it last night, our Bianca De La Garza went to the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona to speak with Republican vice presidential nominee JD Vance, who's been campaigning in Arizona. The interview took place outside. They were sitting right next to the border wall built by President Trump in Montezuma Pass. And the interview is interrupted by a drone flying overhead, a drone controlled by migrants.
I think you're closer than Kamala has been ever.
I think so. And she's been the border czar for 3 years, and she's never visited, and she's never actually tried to understand what's going on. It's really crazy. I mean, you know, right before we started shooting, actually, the Secret Service pulled me aside because there's a group of migrants headed here right now. They're about 2 miles out, and they're apparently flying a drone, which is, I think that's one of the reasons why this helicopter is in the background. And it's like, this is our country, right? We're in our country, the United States of America, and we're worried about drones invading our airspace when the vice presidential nominee is here for an interview.
Is that there's migrants 2 miles away from our shot.
Exactly, yeah. And they're approaching now, and obviously it's getting hot, and, you know, we're going to see what happens.
You know border is immigration one of the biggest issues
for
this campaign, and we could go on to the problems that it causes when you have open borders, be it deadly fentanyl, be it national security concerns, ISIS terrorists being arrested, and then the fact that they want to house all these people, give them jobs, and give them prepaid debit cards.
Yeah.
I just have to ask you, why do you think this is happening? Why would they allow our country? Because they're allowing this to happen.
That's right.
Why would they allow that? We could go into dereliction of duty, oath of office, all of that being violated.
Sure.
This is intentional to open our borders and to allow us to be
invaded.
It is.
Well, look, I think it is intentional. I've asked myself this why question a lot, and fortunately, they actually tell us why they're doing this. What is it?
Well, the migrants are on the way.
Yeah,
so
that's
here
right.
we go. The migrants are coming. Maybe we'll get an unexpected takedown. So the Secret Service drones are up, tracking them?
Well, there's also the migrants have a drone. So the why, you don't have to guess at it because they say it. Now, of course, they accuse Republicans of racism for saying this, but you just take the Democrats' own words. They say that they want to import millions of illegal aliens, give them the right to vote, give them amnesty, and then they don't have to worry about persuading their own citizens anymore because they then have imported a new group of voters. And it's really scandalous if you think about why wouldn't you want to persuade your own people that you have the best policies to improve their lives? It shows how they completely disrespect their own countrymen.
And to further that, Kamala just dropped an ad saying she's been tougher on the border. We're going to play a little bit of this and get your reaction.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
So that's gaslighting. They've done that for a long time. But in the next few weeks, some say Kamala will define herself, and perhaps to those independent voters that you want as well in those battleground states. What's your strategy to combat these types of lies in their campaign ads directly?
I think all we have to do is tell the truth, and we're going to do it on paid media. We're going to do it by going and doing interviews and prosecuting the case against Kamala Harris. But the truth is that she has been the border czar for 3.5 years. It's been a total disaster. And when she talks about that bipartisan border deal, I was in the United States Senate. I was helping to negotiate and look through some of the details of that deal. Here's what it would do. It would codify catch and release, which is one of the reasons why we have such a terrible border policy. It would not end the millions of illegal paroles that Biden and Harris Biden and Harris have implemented, which threw open the gates. It would not re-implement Remain in Mexico, which is one of the ways that we had a better border policy. So it doesn't actually solve any of the problems. I just talked to the Border Patrol men out here. They said, we don't need new laws. We need a border czar that tells us that we're allowed to do our job. That's what needs to change. And they've used this to distract from the fact that their policies have been a failure.
He mentioned Kamala Harris talking about the bipartisan border deal, right? And the truth behind that deal. But a lot of people that she is talking to believe what she's saying because they don't know the truth. The media that they consume isn't giving them the truth or the full story.
He tanked the bipartisan deal because he thought it would help him win an election. Which goes to show Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself.
That was just the other night in Georgia. I believe I played that in Wednesday's Newsmax Daily. So Bianca, doing her job, had to talk about the whole cat lady thing that the left has been criticizing JD Vance on.
I have a daughter who's 18. To be a first election she'll vote for. You have a daughter, much younger.
Much younger.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it. It goes quick. Can we just put to bed for once this childless cat statement?
Yes.
I have cats. I love cats. I know people who don't have cats and hate cats. I mean, it has come now to become something bigger than I think you ever intended.
Yeah.
Would you care if your daughter doesn't have children? Would you care if women politicians are elected and they don't have kids?
Well, look, I want my daughter to do what she wants to do. I want her to fulfill her dreams, and I certainly think that she'll eventually want to have children. Maybe she won't, and that's okay. But I want her to make those choices herself, and I want her to do it in an environment where we promote family formation, where we make it easier for young women to choose life and to have families. The whole point of my argument, and of course the Democrats have lied about what I said, but is that I like families. I want us to be a pro-family country, and I do think that when you hear Kamala Harris say things like maybe we shouldn't have children because of concerns over climate change, my reaction is that is bizarre. That's an anti-child attitude, and I criticize it. But as I said in my own speech where they lied about it, if you can't have children, if you choose to not have children, if it just doesn't work out, we're not attacking you. We're attacking the anti-child mindset that exists in the Democrat Party.
Well, it does exist, and they're using it. They're also using this term weird. You had some support yesterday. There were some California farmers coming out saying, yeah, weird like us.
So now there are helicopters flying overhead because of the migrants drone. But imagine that. They haven't been playing the whole clip, the whole soundbite of what JD Vance actually said about having children and families, which led to the topic of abortion.
We're already putting out things that are saying that you guys are going to have a federal ban.
That's right.
take it away.
Yeah, which of course we haven't. I mean, Donald Trump has been very clear that he wants this to be a state's issue because, look, California is going to have a different abortion policy than Arizona, which is going to have a different abortion policy from Ohio, and that's fine. We have to let the people decide this very tough, very contentious issue. But it's interesting that Kamala Harris is not running on, I made your life better. Kamala Harris is not running on, I lowered your grocery bill. She's not running on, I closed the border. She's running on wedge issues that divide the American people rather than unite the American people. I think that shows she's scared, and it shows she doesn't have a record to run on.
And, you know, obviously you've served our nation, went to Yale, you are living the American dream. And at one point, you weren't in Donald Trump's camp.
That's right.
I mean, you've been very open about that. And I think people evolve. It'd be weird if you didn't change your mind on things at some point. It's natural. It shows emotional intelligence, IQ. But tell our audience, if they're thinking about one point you could be so against him and now running side by side with the man. How do you convince some of the critics, if you will, that you're not doing this for political gain? You're not doing this just for a way to get ahead.
Sure. Well, I think it's normal people change their minds when the facts change. It's one thing to change your mind. It's another thing to do what Kamala Harris has done and run from the media about explaining why every position she has is different from what it was 4 years ago. I mean, my attitude on Trump is I didn't think he was going to be a good president. And to be frank, I kind of believed some of the media lies about him. And then you start thinking for yourself a little bit and you start saying, well, this is what the media said that he said. But then I watched the clip of him and he actually said exactly the opposite. Or this is what the media said he was going to do, but then he actually delivered peace and prosperity for the American people. Maybe I was wrong, and when you're wrong, you should be open about it.
Wow. The more research you do, the less you believe. Seems I've heard that somewhere before. Getting to know JD Vance with Bianca De La Garza at the border in Arizona. JD also delivered this message on the campaign trail about the terrible news of the 9/11 terrorist plea deal.
The Biden-Harris Department of Justice cut a deal with al-Qaeda terrorist Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to avoid the death penalty. It was reported today. Now, as someone who enlisted in the Marines to serve after 9/11, that is ridiculous, but it's not surprising. Now, just think about the point that we've gotten to. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have weaponized the Department of Justice to go after their political opponents, but they're cutting a sweetheart deal with 9/11 terrorists. We need a president who kills terrorists, not negotiates with them.
Okay, joining us now to discuss former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Kerik. Bernie, good to see you.
Thank you.
Your initial thoughts of this, the fact they cut him a plea deal, they're not going to take him to court, try and get the death penalty. I think it's, well, I don't want to speak for them, but I can only imagine what the families of the victims of 9/11 are thinking today.
You know what is horrendous? As somebody that oversaw the response, the rescue, the investigation, I am appalled at this decision. But it goes hand in hand with what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done. They surrendered Afghanistan to the Taliban. They surrendered our borders, the American borders, to the cartels. They've now surrendered the American justice system to three terrorists that were involved in the most substantial terror attack in world history. This is who they are. This is the kind of leadership that they're involved in. And this is exactly why President Trump has to win in November. You can't let people like this go. They should have been held accountable. And if anybody in the entire world deserved the death penalty, it's the people responsible for killing over 3,000 innocent people on September 11th.
Commissioner, in response to this, you posted on X, Kamala Harris wants to be the president of the United States. She owes every victim of 9/11 an apology. This is nothing but a big wet kiss to all these crazy Hamas supporters, commit acts of terror and kill Americans, and you can get away with it. Obviously, those words are very, very clear. But my question is, why would this administration agree to a plea deal? What is the benefit to doing something like that?
Because they're cowering to the left. They're cowering to the Hamas supporters. Look, Kamala Harris has done this for years, and this is something they're known for. I think it's outrageous. I think it's appalling. Nobody can understand why they would do this. If you're an American, anybody that was around on September 11th or the aftermath, they know what we went through. They know what the families went through. This is a slap in the face to every cop, whether it's the NYPD, the Port Authority, and every New York City fireman that died that day and their families that were left behind. It's disgusting.
Very strong words, rightfully so, from former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Kerik on American Agenda with Katrina Zish and Bob Brooks. 9/11 plea deal. It's even difficult to say. It's like an oxymoron, right? Number one, why after 23 years are we still negotiating sentences for the people that we know were the masterminds behind the plot? Number two, after 23 long, painful years, why? Why would the United States give any of them, or even consider giving any of them, a plea deal? New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney also weighed in.
Yeah, you're a New York Congresswoman, and you, along with all of us, will never forget September 11th and hearing from the families this morning. And they've all said that they are sickened by this news, that they could kind of trade this plea deal and have these people continue on with their lives when they murdered thousands of Americans. What are you hearing, I guess, from victims? And what have you heard in the past from those who experienced loss on 9/11?
Right. Well, this is breaking news, but obviously we have been working very hard to help the victims. They've spoken with most of the New York reps, and we've been passing legislation for years now. It's hard to believe how long it's been since 9/11 occurred. It just seems like yesterday. But,
yeah.
We say we're never going to forget, but here we are with more crime, giving plea bargains out, allowing all these illegal immigrants with criminal records, or we don't even know what they are. They're coming into our country and our state, and we're giving them the privileges of citizenship, like a driver's license in New York State and California and other states. And then we're giving them an additional protection known as the green light law. And I'll tell you why this is so significant with yesterday's news on the 9/11 plea bargain. Mm-hmm. After the 9/11 Commission came out with its findings, one of the biggest problems we had is our law enforcement agencies weren't working together to try to keep us safe. And as a response to that, the New York legislature and under Governor Cuomo in 2019 came out with something called the green light law. That actually gave the licenses to illegal immigrants, regardless of their criminal status, regardless of what we know about them, without proving who they really are with legitimate documents. None of that was required. And giving them special status that we could not inquire. Law enforcement agencies could not inquire as to who they were and work with other agencies that may have information on them. They could know if they were dangerous. They could know if they were rapists or criminals of some sort. And we did the exact opposite of what had happened in 9/11 under Governor Cuomo and the left-wing New York legislature. That was one of their first acts when they took over the entire state back in 2019.
That is New York Representative Claudia Tenney, and I love what she said there, right? We say never forget. That's the slogan, but yet we're making plea deals and letting more terrorists into the country. And Andrew Cuomo, the darling of the pandemic, whose decisions led to thousands of deaths in elder care facilities, is the one that passed the law allowing for illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses in New York. The good news, anyway, is that Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and Marine Paul Whelan returned home overnight, arriving at a military base in San Antonio, Texas. This is Paul Whelan.
Sometimes some harsh words with the government, having to keep them accountable for taking care of us. But in the end, here I am.
In Russia, President Putin personally greeted the 8 Russians returning home, including a convicted assassin, some hackers, and a couple that were living with 2 children that the United States called deep cover spies. At least 8 other Americans are still being held in Russia. Obviously, it is fantastic news. Great news that the Americans were released and they're home. But if Russia got 8 prisoners and are still holding Americans, why did we only get 4 people released?
Russian authorities arrested them, convicted them in show trials, and sentenced them to long prison terms with absolutely no legitimate reason whatsoever, none. Paul, a former Marine, was in Russia for a wedding. Evan, a journalist with a Russian in Russia. was in Russia, signed by the Wall Street Journal. Also a journalist, was in Russia to see family. All three falsely accused of being spies. And Vladimir, who was a Russian citizen by birth and holds an American green card, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and was a pallbearer of my friend John McCain's funeral with me. He spoke out against Putin's regime, and for that he was convicted of treason. And now, their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free. Moments ago, the families and I were able to speak to them on the telephone from the Oval Office. They're out of Russia. Earlier today, they were flown to Turkey, and soon they'll be wheels up on their way home to see their families. This is an incredible relief for all the family members gathered here. It's a relief to the friends and colleagues all across the country who've been praying for this day for a long time. The deal that made this possible was a feat of diplomacy and friendship. Multiple countries helped get this done. They joined the difficult, complex negotiations at my request, and I personally thank them all again. And I've thanked them personally, and I'll thank them again. All told, Russia has released 16 prisoners. 8 Russians who are being held in the West will be sent home as well. These 16 prisoners from Russia that Russia has released include 4 Americans, 5 Germans, 7 Russian citizens who are political prisoners in their own country. One of those Russians runs a human rights organization, Memorial, which won a Nobel Prize in 2022. Putin threw him in prison for voicing opposition to the war in Ukraine. 4 others work with Alexei Navalny, a political opposition leader who died in Russia prison this year. Now they can live safely abroad and continue their work of advocating for democracy if they so choose.
President Biden speaking at the White House yesterday, and if there is any question of who he's talking about when he said, if anyone questions if allies matter, you know he means Donald Trump. And that's where his speech became political, as always. He went on to say that he inherited many of the prisoners from the previous administration, etc., etc. Newsmax host Jen Pellegrino spoke about it with retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, who served as the 2020 Trump campaign National Security Advisor.
I'd like to get your reaction, Tony, to the president's remarks there. He talked about the credit to the allies, the 7 nations that came together to make this happen. My question to you, as you look to is the prisoner swap here, at what expense, at what risk and cost is this to the United States when you engage in a move like this?
Well, it's great for the families who have got Paul Whelan returned, and to the reporter, Gorsuch, I think, or I might get his name wrong. I apologize, but it's great for them. It's bad for us, and here's why. 7 nations shouldn't take and have to work what we should be able to do as a nation. During the Cold War, I'm a Cold Warrior. I came up through it. The United States was able to negotiate these sorts of things directly with the Soviets. So it speaks volumes of the fact that we have to have, as Biden said, our allies work on our behalf, because Joe Biden and his band of high school debaters have so badly damaged the relationship with the Russians. I'm not saying we should embrace Russia. I'm saying we should have an ability to actually use our strength and our prestige to do something. So the fact that we couldn't do that, it took years to negotiate this through third parties, does not speak highly of Joe Biden and what Kamala Harris regime would look like as well. So God bless those who have been returned. God bless those Russian dissidents. I've said this before. Putin is a thug. He is. But it doesn't change the fact that we should be negotiating from a position of authority and strength instead of having to work with allies through third parties to do what we should be able to do.
U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer on Newsmax. President Biden is headed home to Delaware today. Vice President Harris will announce her running mate within the next couple of days, and her campaign has already announced the new ticket will hold rallies in swing states beginning next Tuesday. The former president, Donald Trump, has a rally tomorrow with JD Vance in Atlanta, Georgia. It'll be live on Newsmax, as always. You can keep up with all of the news today and all weekend long on Newsmax, Newsmax.com, and Newsmax Plus for the most complete lineup of all your favorite shows and expert guests. Make sure you have Newsmax Plus. Simply go to NewsmaxPlus.com and get signed up. Don't miss Wake Up America Weekend Edition tomorrow and Sunday starting at 7, Saturday and Sunday Agenda, Saturday and Sunday Report, the Gorka Reality Check, documentaries, and more. Thank you for listening to the Newsmax Daily. I'm Tony Marino. I appreciate it. At Radio_Marino on X. Be safe, especially if you are in the Panhandle or northern Florida with the impending severe weather, potential tropical storm, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.